The November fog rolled off the Seine like a living thing, swallowing the street lamps along Quai de Bourbon and turning Paris into a city of ghosts. I stood outside our apartment. Her apartment now, technically, since she'd asked me to leave 3 weeks ago, holding the leather purse I'd found abandoned on the cafe table where we'd met for our civilized discussion about the separation. She'd left in a hurry when her phone rang. An emergency at the gallery, she'd said. Her face had gone pale. She'd forgotten the purse entirely. Inside, beneath her wallet and lipstick, and the moleskin where she sketched, was a hotel keycard, Hotel Lutetia, room 507. And beneath that, a receipt dated 2 months ago. The same hotel, the same room number. 2 months ago, we'd still been together. 2 months ago, she'd been sleeping beside me every night, telling me she loved me, planning our future. 2 months ago, I'd still believed in Elise Beaumont, believed in us, believed in something. I should have left the purse at the cafe. I should have called her, arranged to return it like a decent person. Instead, I pocketed the keycard and walked into the fog, toward the left bank, toward answers I wasn't sure I wanted. The Beaumont family had owned their gallery in Saint-Germain-des-Prés for 4 generations. Elise's great-grandfather had sold paintings to Picasso. Her grandfather had discovered unknowns who became masters. Her father, Claude, had expanded into sculpture and installation art, transforming the gallery into one of Paris's most prestigious spaces. And then he died suddenly last year, leaving everything to Elise, his only child, his protégé, his greatest pride. Except he'd also left debts, mountains of them. The gallery was mortgaged to the ceiling. There were lawsuits from artists claiming unpaid commissions. The beautiful apartment on Ile Saint-Louis, where Elise and I had lived for 3 years, was leveraged beyond reason. I discovered this 6 months ago, accidentally, when a lawyer's letter arrived, addressed to Claude. Elise had snatched it away, her face transforming with an anger I'd never seen before. "This is family business," she'd hissed. "You're not family. You're just someone I live with." The words had cut deeper than she'd intended, or perhaps exactly as deep as she'd meant them to. We weren't married. After 3 years together, she'd never suggested it, had deflected whenever I raised the subject. Now I understood why. I was convenient, useful for bill splitting and companionship, but not truly part of her world. I'd tried to help anyway. I was a financial analyst. This was what I did. But she'd frozen me out completely, becoming distant and cold, spending long hours at the gallery, coming home exhausted and uncommunicative. Then came the request for space. She needed to focus on saving her father's legacy. I was a distraction. Could I please move out? Just temporarily. Just until she'd stabilize things. I'd been living in a cramped studio in the 11th arrondissement for 3 weeks, waiting for her to reach out, to explain, to invite me back. She'd called twice. Brief, business-like conversations about forwarded mail and shared subscriptions. Nothing personal. Nothing real. The Hotel Lutetia rose before me, Art Deco elegance glowing through the fog. I'd walked here on autopilot, my mind churning through possibilities. A legitimate reason for the keycard. A friend staying there. A client meeting. Anything but what my instincts were screaming. The lobby was warm, filled with well-dressed people speaking a dozen languages. I approached the elevator, keycard in hand, and pressed it to the sensor. 5th floor. The doors closed around me like a coffin. Room 507 was at the end of a carpeted hallway hung with black and white photographs of old Paris. I stood outside for several minutes, listening. Voices inside. One was Elise's, unmistakable, even muffled through the door. The other was male, deep, laughing at something she'd said. I used the keycard. The lock clicked open with a soft, electronic purr. They were standing by the window overlooking Boulevard Raspail, silhouetted against the city lights. Elise wore the black dress I'd bought her for her birthday, the one that made her look like a 1940s film star. The man had his hand on her waist, possessive and familiar. I recognized him. Mathieu Girard, real estate developer. 60 years old, silver-haired, obscenely wealthy. He'd attended Claude's funeral, had given Elise his card, had whispered something in her ear that made her nod seriously. They turned when they heard the door. Elise's face went through the same sequence I'd seen in Tuscany with Julia. Shock, fear, calculation. But Mathieu simply smiled, amused, as if my presence were entertaining rather than threatening. "Ah," he said in French. "The roommate. Elise mentioned you might be persistent." "Mathieu, please," Elise began, but he silenced her with a gesture. "No more games, mon cœur. He's here. Let him understand." He turned to me fully, still holding his whiskey glass with elegant ease. "Your girlfriend, forgive me, your former girlfriend, has been keeping me company these past months. In exchange, I've been saving her father's pathetic little gallery from bankruptcy." "You're lying," I said, though I knew he wasn't. Elise moved toward me, her hands outstretched in a placating gesture I'd seen 1,000 times before, always when she wanted something. "Thomas, listen. I had no choice. The debts were crushing me. The gallery would have been seized. Everything Papa built, everything 4 generations of Beaumonts created, would have been auctioned off to strangers. So you sold yourself instead." Her face hardened. "I did what was necessary. Mathieu made me an offer. He'd settle the debts, restructure the loans, ensure the gallery's survival. In return, I'd be available to him. Companionship, discretion, until his wife's political campaign is finished and he can divorce without scandal." "How businesslike," I said, tasting bile. "It is business," Mathieu interjected. "Elise gets her gallery. I get a beautiful, cultured companion for a year or 2. Everyone benefits." He paused. "Well, almost everyone. You, unfortunately, were an inconvenience. Hence the request for space." The betrayal was almost mundane in its calculation. No passion, no love affair that had swept them away despite themselves. Just a transaction, Elise's body and time in exchange for her father's legacy. "Did you ever love me?" I asked her. She hesitated, which was answer enough. "I cared for you. But Thomas, you have to understand. The gallery is everything. It's my name, my history, my purpose. What were we? Just another relationship that might or might not have worked out. But the Beaumont Gallery is eternal." I looked around the hotel room. The champagne on ice, the designer shopping bags from Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré, the unmade bed with its tangled silk sheets. This was where she'd been all those late nights she'd claimed to be working. This was what she'd chosen over me, over us, over any remaining shred of integrity. "Get out," Mathieu said, his voice hardening. "You've had your moment of revelation. Now leave before I have security remove you." I left the key card on the dresser and walked out, my legs somehow functioning despite the numbness spreading through my body. But as I rode the elevator down, As I walked out into the foggy Paris night, something crystallized inside me. Not hot rage like Marco in Tuscany, but something colder, more patient, more French perhaps. Mathieu Girard was a real estate developer. His projects required permits, approvals, environmental clearances. His wife was running for the National Assembly on an anti-corruption platform. And I was a financial analyst with connections throughout the banking sector, with friends in journalism, with a methodical mind and nothing left to lose. It took 6 months. I worked quietly, carefully, building my case piece by piece. I discovered that Mathieu's developments had cut corners on safety regulations. I found payments to city officials that looked suspiciously like bribes. I connected him to a toxic waste scandal that had been buried years ago. I compiled everything into an anonymous dossier and sent copies to 3 places: a crusading journalist at Le Monde, a prosecutor known for pursuing corruption cases, and Mathieu's wife's campaign manager. The scandal broke in May, just as the Beaumont Gallery was preparing its spring exhibition. Mathieu was arrested. His assets were frozen, including the money propping up the gallery. His wife's campaign collapsed, but she filed for divorce immediately, claiming ignorance of his activities. Without Mathieu's financial support, the gallery's restructured loans came due. Elise couldn't pay them. The building was seized. The Beaumont name, carried through 4 generations, ended with her. I watched it happen from a distance, never revealing my role, never confronting her again. I'd moved to Amsterdam by then, accepted a position with the investment firm, started rebuilding my life in a city where the canals smelled of rain and possibility rather than betrayal. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Elise had moved back to her mother's apartment in the 15th arrondissement, that she was working at someone else's gallery now, just another employee, her dynasty reduced to memory. Sometimes I wondered if she suspected my involvement. If she lay awake nights putting together the pieces, realizing how precisely her world had been dismantled, how the very resources she'd traded herself for had become the mechanism of her destruction. But mostly I didn't think about her at all. The numbness had faded, replaced not with satisfaction exactly, but with something like peace. I'd learned what Marco learned in his Tuscan villa, that revenge doesn't restore what was taken, doesn't heal what was broken. Yet, standing on an Amsterdam bridge one evening, watching the light fade over the Herengracht, I felt something the Beaumonts and Ferrettis and all the betrayers never could. The freedom of having nothing left to protect, nothing left to lose, and nothing left to prove. The fog rolled in off the canal, familiar as memory, and I walked home through it without fear.